Today, we are going to have a conversation with each other, with you, about how to measure, how to understand, how to maybe even improve developer productivity. Now, we only have 20 minutes, so we're only going to just start to scratch the surface. But hopefully, we can set the stage for all of the amazing talks that are going to come after us over the next couple of days. And so where I'd like to start today is sort of to ask a question. If you were to have to write down, one number, one metric that you think represents developer productivity, what would it be? Would it be lines of code? Would it be story points? Would it be number of bugs fixed? Probably not. Like, we have known for years now that those are incomplete metrics. And, one of the central themes of space is that you actually can't distill developer productivity down to a single metric. And even if you could, it certainly wouldn't be some basic count of activity. And so, what really does matter? Well, developer productivity, it is nuanced, it is complex, it is deeply human. And we need metrics that reflect that. And so at Microsoft, our attempt to centrally try to measure and improve our developer experience is an initiative called Engineering Thrive. And through Eng Thrive, what I really want to drive is how do we increase the speed of innovation? Sort of a lot of what Hans was talking about in the opening keynote is how do we allow you as developers to ship new capabilities, new innovation, new value to your customers faster. And so the things that I like to measure are all of the things that get in the way of allowing you to do that. Where do you have pain points? Where do things slow you down? Now, one of my big concerns is that as an industry, we are racing to try to find metrics to measure the impact of AI. And I fear that we're actually in many ways moving backwards. We're being revisited by ghosts of the past. We are having executives, our own executives, up on stages talking about lines of code as this credible measure about the impact of AI. And I think that we forget that AI is a means to an end. And so when I think about how do we measure the impact of AI, I think about it in the same way that I think about measuring developer experience in general. Is AI helping us deliver innovation faster, more efficiently, in a more meaningful way? And that's sort of like what I am looking at. I know, Nachi, that you've spent a lot of time looking at developer experience metrics. What do you see from your standpoint?
See, ideally, what I see from here is this is just rethinking what we've done in the past before. It's not just a question of volume, it's a question of velocity and quality. It is not only how fast we build things, how efficient we build things, but it is also how better are they in terms of quality. Because one of the things AI actually helps us a lot with is actually understanding error-free code, which is very hard. Error-free code doesn't exist. It is basically looking towards what can we do to make sure that all these three metrics triangulate together. Thinking about something that people have tossed around in the past for a while, pair programming. Yes, there are also cultural implications of pair programming, but we are actually changing pair programming where the pair programmer here is AI. How do we interact with AI? How do we actually leverage the strengths that AI has? What kind of prompts do we use? How do we learn from our past mistakes? If we look back at the last 2 years of research studies that have been done at the primary conferences, a lot of them focus on code generation. The next hottest topic is test quality and test generation. An aspect a lot of people evaluate or think about in the research community is not just benchmarks. I'm a huge fan of benchmarks for quality, but also benchmarks don't capture everything. Their use in empirical practice actually shows what are the hidden points that AI doesn't help us with. So with respect to that, testing and code generation are the primary aspects, but there are so many ways in which AI can help us improve our productivity. Code documentation. One of the things that's fascinating here is actually software security. Security bugs are too far, too few. Unlike bug prediction models, it's hard to build security prediction models because they rarely occur in practice. So how can we use AI to detect patterns from what has happened in the past so that we can leverage these to build models to understand code security, software security going forward. And a lot of this work actually has focused on a varying use of topics. I mean, let me explain. A lot of the academic studies focus on using students as subjects. While there's nothing wrong with it, I mean, students are great examples. I mean, we have to understand that engineers who worked in a code base for 10 plus years have a different perspective on things rather than someone who's actually starting fresh. Yeah. So how do we actually balance these contexts? So looking at the context variables here makes a huge difference. And some of your research recent research at Microsoft actually shows the same thing, right? Context variables with respect to the studies you've done regarding developer productivity.
Yeah, so when I look at some of my own research projects over the last couple of years, I've been very fortunate to be able to work on some very interesting projects that are, not shockingly, very much based on how AI is changing the developer experience. And so if I, just talking through a few of these, because I approached, the problem from a lot of different angles. So one of my more recent papers that I co-authored with Tom Zimmerman, who is in the crowd somewhere, stop by and say hi if you run into him, is time warp. So I'm very interested in this notion of how do developers spend their time. And we see that there is this striking gap between how you want to spend your time and how you actually spend your time. We are all spending far too much time on meetings and coordination work and sort of corporate overhead, and not nearly enough time doing the kinds of work that we find valuable, we find meaningful, we find fulfilling. And this is a place where I think AI has a real opportunity to help us. And we actually got a pre-submitted question, which is great. And so thank you to whoever pre-submitted a question, asking about, what happens with the time savings from AI. And I'm hoping that AI has this ability to close the gap between how we actually spend our time at work and how we want to spend our time at work. Because today we are doing far too much work about work and not enough new innovation itself. And so can AI reduce some of this background toil, close that gap so we can focus more on, again, delivering new innovation to customers? And if you are interested in sort of this notion of developer time, I highly encourage you to stick around for the next talk from Karim. He's going to go through this in a lot more detail, and I think it's going to be great. And it is clear that, you as developers, you want AI to be helping in lots of different places of your workflow. And so another paper that I worked on recently, I guess I published it last year, was towards effective support for developers, effective AI support for developers. And what we found is that you are looking for AI not just to help you write code faster as a coding assistant, which is something you are looking for, but you're looking for help in lots of different places in your workflow. You want help writing documentation, you want help learning new tools and processes. And oh my gosh, did I learn how much you absolutely hate writing unit tests. And you are hoping that AI can help a lot with that. But there are concerns you have. There are some very real and valid, blockers that are keeping you from maybe adopting AI as much as you otherwise might. Developers are concerned about privacy. You are concerned about trust. You're concerned about over-reliance on AI. It's like there is research, not even just unique to developers, but for knowledge workers, that as we use AI more, it makes it harder to keep our critical thinking skills. And that is a very real concern that I see popping in my own research. And it is clear that, we want AI to be a trusted partner, a pair programmer, a peer programmer. We certainly don't want it to be a replacement, but we have to be able to, again, trust it in order to help us deliver that innovation. And the kinds of things that make us a little more accepting to adopt AI into our workflows, a little more reluctant. There is another talk this afternoon from Elise. I highly encourage you to listen to that one. I think she'll go into a lot more detail, and it's going to be really interesting. And then sort of the last of the studies that I wanted to talk about for my own work, my most recent study, is the space of AI. And I feel that the conversation has really been about how much faster is AI helping us write code? Like is GitHub Copilot making us complete coding tasks 20% faster? And I think that's interesting, but I think it's a pretty narrow view of the problem. Again, if a central theme of space is that there is no one metric and there is no one dimension, we shouldn't just look at how much more stuff we can do. I wanted to extend that to the idea of integrating AI into our workflows. And what we found in this work is that AI, like other areas of developer productivity, it is complicated, it is nuanced, and is multidimensional. And so we saw that AI is impacting across lots of different dimensions, not just how much more code we can write, how much more efficiently we can write it. It's even changing the ways we collaborate in a lot of interesting and maybe unpredictable ways. And again, we need to have metrics that can rise to the challenge and allow us to measure these different facets of how AI is impacting developer productivity. And so from all this research, the research that you mentioned, my own research, it's all academically interesting, but for me, it really begs the question: what are we going to do about it? How can we actually take some of these learnings and drive meaningful improvement in our developer experiences? And so, a question that I like to ask myself is if someone were to give me unlimited budget, where would I invest to improve developer experience? I will say, I don't think my boss is in the audience today, but he is not going to give me unlimited budget. But if he were, where would I make my investment? And for me, the answer is clear. I would be merciless at trying to drive down developer toil. Toil is a tax on innovation. I can see in the data that the more time you spend in low quality meetings, the more likely you are to want to quit your job. The more time you spend dealing with the bureaucratic paperwork associated with managing JIRA tickets, the more likely you are to want to quit your job. I can see the more time you spend digging yourself out of a massive debt of compliance items, the more likely you are to want to quit your job. And these aren't just annoyances. These are sort of direct barriers that take time and energy away from delivering new innovation, building new capabilities, moving your products forward for your customers. And so if I want to address toil, well, how am I going to do it? Well, there's actually a few different levers we can pull. And one is just good old-fashioned automation. We have had this for decades. It is, someone once told me, you don't need AI to solve what a basic algorithm can do. And I took that to heart. And it's, we can automate repetitive manual tasks. We can write scripts to make it easier to do environment setup. And where we can do basic automation, we should, because taking, an hour to do something, to automate something that will then save every dev 5 minutes for all of time. It's yes, we should go and do that thing. But AI does have the ability, I think, to sort of supercharge our attempt to drive down toil. So things like meeting summarizations or trying to understand those compliance requirements that make you want to quit your jobs, helping us prioritize and manage our work item backlog, tasks that used to feel too human to automate. Now AI can rise to that challenge. And I think that's going to provide some really interesting opportunities to drive down all of those things that, again, get in the way of you having the time and energy to focus on new investments, new innovation. And it's not just that we should invest in technology, right? We should invest in the technology to make this possible. But again, with my unlimited budget, I would invest in culture change. So for me, it's one thing if you are a developer on a central sort of dev platform team. It's yes, it is our job to be reducing toil, reducing friction for developers. But if there is a developer on a random feature team, and they, again, take an hour out of their day to automate something that is then going to save every developer for the rest of the time 5 minutes, we should recognize, we should reward that. We should give that developer a bonus, right? Because that is going to allow us to ship innovation faster to customers. And so I'm really interested, again, with my unlimited budget, the first thing I tackle is all of the things that are not working on new creative ideas. And so I'm curious, what about from your standpoint, Nachi?
I actually have two things in mind. So one of it is actually an area which I'm surprised there hasn't been that much investment. So, all of us suffer from technical debt. I mean, we have code that's lived on for years. So AI-assisted code refactoring is something that actually would probably benefit the broader community. I mean, we see a lot of work on code generation, test generation. We don't see that much work on actually going and refactoring existing code. So this is also an amazing startup idea. Like, everybody has code that's, some of the financial organizations have code written in COBOL, which they're actually now translating to modern languages. So as we actually start investing in AI, anyone who actually builds a large-scale AI refactoring tool, that would probably find tremendous use across the market and with unlimited budget. I mean, it's not easy. People have tried and they haven't been very successful, partly because, refactoring does require the code to actually work in the same way it did before. So there is a fair amount of functional verification that needs to be done. So that, I think, would be a fascinating area for investment, for analysis, for studies. The second is the overall quality of test generated. I mean, a lot of people are using AI-generated tests for, writing their unit tests, getting done with mundane tasks. But what is the quality of these tests? People often use code coverage as an indicator. But, if you look at broad research literature, there hasn't been any real studies that have shown higher code coverage led to better final field quality. Because code coverage can be gamed in so many ways. So we need better measures of code quality and test quality. So how do we invest in it? How do we build in it? Telemetry is one way. So I want to give a shout out to Kareem's talk that's talking a lot about data, about how we collect telemetry. But aside of these two, one of the things that's fascinated me is how can we get done, like you mentioned, with repetitive tasks. So one of the biggest things that most large organizations, even small organizations face is, repetitive bug fixing. A lot of the bugs or issues that come up have been fixed by others in the past. Yeah. So finding them, like knowledge management, or even creating the first version of the bug fix so that people can actually iterate over it, fix it, and ship it. So that reduces the amount of time required to fix issues. Resolution time is faster, deployment is faster, so it affects the whole downstream of quality. So these are three areas that I think are well worthy of investment going forward. And these are not easy problems. People have looked at it in the past in different lenses. It does require a radical rethink. This is aside of the model improvements that happen. How do we focus on the application stack? I'd also be very curious because some of the places where we've seen AI benefit is faster ramp up of new employees. Because a lot of organizations, large organizations, invest a significant amount of time to ramp up new employees, where they're learning the code base, the tools. They usually have an engineer helping them out for like 3 months. But AI is actually now helping our engineers ramp up faster because they can look at code recommendations, they can look at summaries, they can ramp up faster. So how do we actually tailor use cases for specific populations of developers? That would be a huge thing going forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because a lot of my work has looked at sort of the ramp-up curves for new hires and how important that is to them. And it's, one of the things that I have found is that by new hire developers, just their 10th pull request, code check-in, by just that 10th check-in, I have a greater than 50% chance of predicting what their code output patterns will look like 2 years down the road. It's like those patterns as we're starting, that momentum we build early in our career is so important. Now, it's also sort of indicative of the kinds of things that allow you to ramp up quicker, the kinds of things that allow you to have maybe higher throughput patterns down the road. And so it's interesting to think about how AI might be impacting that. So I do see we only have a very little bit of time left. I am curious, what maybe new projects you have in the pipeline, if there's anything you can share or talk about.
Sure. So one of the things we've been focusing on over the last year is on AI code risk, which is using AI to actually assess the risk of the code that's built by humans and or AI. So every diff that comes in, we are able to get a probability of risk of that particular diff causing a problem downstream so that we can mitigate it by more stronger code reviews, by additional testing, by Canary deployment. And a lot of this actually, it kind of matches engineers' gut feel. So if you talk to engineers across the community, not just at Meta, if you ask them what are the risky parts of your code base, they will actually know it. They'll be like, oh, these are the parts that we need to watch out for. But it's after the top 10 percentile that they are surprised. They're like, I didn't realize this file was risky. But then it has this aha moment. They are able to explain why it's risky and the history behind it, which also ties into the automated refactoring work that I'm talking about. Like, how do we go refactor our existing code base so that we make it less risky going forward? So this is something we've been focusing on quite a bit. But part of it has also been like, how do we collect the right data? Yeah. So this has brought up a fascinating question. For us to actually have great AI deployments or fine-tuned models, we need to have great data. It's very hard to actually go back and collect data because people will usually never go back and fill in forms or collect data. It's only going forward. So this has also shown the value of collecting good data. Yep. So it's also motivated a lot of teams to make sure their data is clean, because when you train on clean data, the better are your results. Have you seen this observation at Microsoft as well, where the quality of data plays into a lot of this?
Yes, absolutely. And it's, one of the things that I am trying to do right now, in fact, is to create a better cross-company metric for this idea of speed of innovation. And so I want to be able to measure from when we have our first planning construct, when we first sort of germinate an idea until it is actually in the hands of a customer. Now, in order to do that, I have to be able to stitch together not just the deployment information, the coding constructs, but I have to be able to stitch it to the planning constructs. And my ability to do that is only as good as the data. Now, LLMs make it a lot easier to go and reason over the fact that every team at my company sort of plans and tracks their work differently. Like the words we use to describe work is different. But it's even with the help of LLMs to say, oh, if one team calls it a deliverable, another team calls it a feature, those are the same thing. That's only as good as my ability to find that data to begin with and to have some details associated with it. And so, yes, I see that all of the time.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so I do think with just another minute, something that I want to touch on from my own ongoing work is AI is clearly going to be transformative. It is already transformative. There are so many talks throughout the rest of the next couple of days around AI. And I think the research that we both shared shows that it is warranted. We should be having those discussions. But we shouldn't forget that there are lots of other ways to improve developer experience. And again, developer experience is incredibly human. And just an example of that, a project that I am working on with someone else in the crowd, Dr. Thomas Fritz, he's here somewhere, I don't know where, with an amazing PhD student in his lab, is, we're looking at things even like, if you spray lavender at developers while they sleep, does it improve sleep quality and thus do you code better the next day? And so it's, we should be looking at not just how AI is improving developer productivity. We shouldn't forget that there are lots of factors, including human factors, that we should be studying as well. And so with that, I think we are just about on time. I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Please come and find us over the next couple of days. We don't actually have the ability to take questions with a keynote, but you can ask us one-on-one. And I hope you enjoy all of the following talks. Thank you all so much.